Once upon a time, in a narrow cobblestone street of a sleepy, snow-covered town, an old shoemaker lived with his devoted wife in a small, ancient cottage that always smelled of rich leather and beeswax. He was a man of great kindness and tireless dedication to his craft, yet despite his immense skill, they had fallen into extreme poverty and could barely afford a single loaf of crusty bread for their supper. One chilly winter evening, with the wind howling through the cracks in the walls, the shoemaker realized there was only one single piece of fine leather left in his workshop, just enough for one final pair of shoes. With a heavy heart and a weary sigh, he carefully cut the leather according to his very best pattern and left the pieces on his scarred wooden workbench to be sewn together the following morning. "I am far too tired and discouraged to work tonight, so I will wake up with the first light of tomorrow to finish them," he whispered to himself before blowing out the candle and going to bed in the dark. The next morning, after a restless and cold sleep, he walked into the workshop and saw a genuine miracle sitting precisely where he had left his unfinished scraps of brown leather the night before. Instead of raw materials, there sat a pair of shoes so perfectly finished, with every silver stitch aligned and every surface polished to a brilliant, glass-like shine that reflected the morning sun. The shoes were sewn so delicately and with such exquisite, otherworldly craftsmanship that the old man rubbed his eyes in utter disbelief, wondering if he was still dreaming. In the soft morning light, a wealthy customer happened to pass by the shop window, and being struck by the sheer, undeniable beauty of the shoes, he purchased them for a sum of money that was far beyond the usual market price. With this unexpected and life-saving treasure, the shoemaker was able to buy enough high-quality leather to prepare 2 new pairs of shoes to be worked on for the very next day's business. Once again, he spent the quiet evening cutting the leather into precise shapes and laid them out neatly on the wooden table, praying that the mysterious help would return to his humble shop once more. To his utter amazement and joy, the following morning revealed 2 more pairs of stunning shoes, glowing with a mysterious quality that no human hand in the entire kingdom seemed capable of producing. Thus began a cycle of daily magic, and the old man's humble business became more prosperous and successful than he had ever dared to dream. During his long, difficult years of struggle and hunger, news of the miraculous footwear spread like wildfire through the town, and wealthy lords and elegant ladies from distant lands flocked to the shop to buy the shoes made by the mysterious, invisible master. But deep in his heart, the old shoemaker was restless with a burning curiosity, constantly wondering who was the secret, selfless benefactor helping him under the silent cover of the deep velvet night. As the festive season of Christmas approached with its falling snow, he suggested to his wife that they should stay awake all night to finally discover the beautiful truth behind this wonderful, life-changing mystery. The couple lit a single small candle, then quickly blew it out to remain hidden in the shadows, and huddled together in the corner of the workshop behind the heavy, dusty folds of the window curtains. When the grand clock in the town square struck the magical hour of midnight, the workshop window creaked open in a very gentle and silent manner, as if moved by the invisible hands of the wind. 2 tiny, nimble elves, who were wearing no clothes at all despite the biting winter cold, hopped onto the workbench with the incredible grace and speed of acrobats from a forgotten fairy tale. They immediately picked up the pieces of leather and began working with a joyful, feverish passion, their tiny hammers tapping out a rhythmic sound that was like a happy song in the quiet room. Their miniature hands moved the silver needles with lightning speed, pulling the thread through the tough leather so fast that the human eye could barely follow their intricate and masterful motions. In what seemed like only a few short heartbeats, the new shoes were completely finished, polished to a mirror shine, and arranged in a perfect, proud row upon the old shoemaker's workbench. Having finished their selfless task with a final touch, the 2 little elves hopped down, giggled softly to one another, and vanished through the window as quickly and mysteriously as they had first arrived. The shoemaker and his wife stepped out from their hiding place, feeling deeply moved and humbled by the pure, honest for kindness of these tiny, magical creatures who worked while the world slept. The wife whispered with tears of gratitude in her eyes, "These little spirits have rescued us from a life of misery and made us rich. We truly must find a meaningful way to show them our heartfelt thanks. It breaks my heart to see them working so hard in the dark with no clothes to protect their tiny bodies from the freezing winter air and the biting frost of this cold December night." So, with great care and love, she spent the next few days sewing miniature coats of fine wool, tiny trousers of soft green velvet, and knitting little pairs of warm, colorful socks with the smallest needles. The shoemaker himself joined in the joyful effort, using his very best tools and finest scraps to handcraft 2 tiny pairs of boots, using the most supple and expensive leather available in his entire shop. On the holy night of Christmas Eve, instead of leaving out pieces of leather, they placed the beautifully wrapped little outfits and the tiny boots on the workbench under the glow of the winter moon. They hid behind the curtain once more, their hearts beating with intense excitement as they waited to see the reaction of their tiny, hard-working guests to the wonderful surprise they had prepared. Exactly at the stroke of midnight, the 2 elves appeared through the window as usual and jumped onto the table, ready to put in another long night of labor for the kind old shoemaker. But instead of the usual brown leather and patterns, they found the bright, colorful clothes and the tiny, beautiful boots waiting for them in the very middle of the clean and quiet workspace. The elves let out high-pitched squeals of pure delight and hurriedly began to dress themselves, pulling on the warm wool coats and lacing up the tiny leather boots with great laughter and enthusiasm. They admired their new reflections in the dark window pane, dancing in energetic circles and singing a merry song that filled the entire workshop with a sense of pure, unadulterated Christmas joy. "Now we are handsome young gentlemen of fashion. We have no more need to labor over old leather and heavy shoes for others," they cried out in their tiny, tinkling voices that sounded like bells. With a final, playful somersault across the room, they leapt through the open window and vanished into the silent, snowy night, carrying their newfound happiness and warmth with them into the world. From that magical Christmas night onward, the little elves never returned to the workshop, for they had received the greatest gift of all, the gift of being seen, recognized, and loved by human hearts. However, the old shoemaker and his wife never wanted for anything again, living out their remaining days in total comfort, abundance, and peace in their cozy little cottage on the edge of town. The old man continued to practice his craft with joy, making fine shoes for his neighbors with his own honest hands, always remembering the touch of magic that had saved them in their darkest hour. The beautiful story of their gratitude and the tiny elves continued to warm the hearts of everyone in the town for generations. Long after the winter snow had melted away into spring,